Wow, what a terrible day for Ron Desantis. Disney is sure owning him big time right now. Disney has just announced not only... Actually, you know what? I won't get to that part first. I'll save that for later. That's the cherry on top. The big news today is that Disney is canceling the relocation of 2,000 California employees. Southern California, big Hollywood libs, progressives, leftoids, whatever you want to call them. They were going to be brought to Orlando. They were told, they were sent a letter from Disney back in July of 2021, and they were told, guess what, chumps? You're moving to Orlando. Florida's starting to shift red, and we need to reinforce the Democratic base in Florida. So your vote is not really needed in California. California's solidly blue. We're moving you over to Florida. Well, today, Bob Iger has finally given up on that dream. He's given up. He recognizes, you know what, Florida's red. It's going to stay red, and there's nothing I can do about it. So there's no point in investing hundreds of millions of dollars, although most of it is being financed by a state-issued tax break, in building a brand new office building, or actually they're calling it a campus. It's a full campus. It's not just one building, because it's supposed to have 2,000 employees working here. So it's more than one building, we're told. And it is no longer going to be developed. At least there is one piece of Central Florida real estate that will be preserved. You know, Central Florida, you look back into it with the parts that kind of predate Disney. It's a pretty beautiful place. But since Disney, you know, it's been sanitized, corporatized, suburbanized, and it's really quite ugly. Despite all the, the fun attractions and things, I'm not going to say that theme parks aren't fun. Now, my favorite part of this story is that the media, and by extension, pro-Trump influencers for some reason, they see this legitimately. I was being tongue-in-cheek at the beginning, saying, oh my gosh, it's a terrible day for Ron DeSantis. They really do see this as a loss for him. They think that it's an own for Disney to pull 2,000 blue state voters out of Florida. I have to tell you, folks, Hollywood liberals moving from California to Florida would not be a win for any Republican governor. It's not a win for the state overall, because it's just making us even more overpopulated. Florida's already, one of the most densely populated states in America. I mean, we're not New Jersey yet. We do still have, a lot of rural counties, but, you can't drive for very long in Florida without going through major cities. If you go along the coast, they're pretty much one after the other, and thanks to Disney, you can't even drive all the way across the state, in the middle of the state, away from the coast, away from the beaches, without hitting major urban sprawl. You ever talk to people who actually live in Florida and vote in Florida? More population growth, more economic growth is not something that we see as a positive thing for the most part, because it means more traffic. It means that you have more ugly environments to look at because they never build anything attractive. We're not building Athens and Rome. And oftentimes, it is the opinion of most people who already live here that when the rest of America sends us their people, they're not sending their best. And is that really fair? Not necessarily. But it's natural when you live somewhere and it starts to become overcrowded that you have, the existing population tends to resent the newcomers. And so, even putting aside the fact that these are going to be overwhelmingly Democratic voters who would vote against Governor DeSantis or any Republicans in the future, considering that any politician's constituency is people who already live here, doing something that indirectly results in a slight, and I mean a infinitesimally small, like a blip, a slight lower increase in the population in an overcrowded state, that's a political win. Now, even still, I didn't look up the exact statistics of how many people move here every year, or every day, or every month, but 2,000 less people, that's not going to make a difference. But, you know, we have a lot of close elections here in Florida that come down to, you know, less than 100,000 votes. And so, could 2,000 votes, you know, make the difference in a close election? Yeah. But as far as the Florida Republican Party is concerned, if Disney decided to start moving employees out of Florida and, you know, completely reverse the process of, you know, digging in here. I mean, of course, they have to keep the parks. Disney World is not moving anywhere. Disney World is a place. You can't just pick up and move it. They couldn't even sell it because they wouldn't they would have to demolish everything to sell it because Disney would not let someone else buy the Magic Kingdom and then open their own Magic Kingdom, rename it, the Mystical Kingdom, and still have the castle. And, even if they got scrubbed off all the characters, they're not going to let somebody use that and just take over the theme park and rebrand it. So Disney World is always going to be there. But they could run the park with less employees than they have now. They would still need, all the park employees, but I'm saying the other people associated with Disney in and around, Kissimmee and Orlando, they can get them out of there and move them back to Burbank. I mean, I've known people who worked at Disney World, and I have to tell you, they're not the best that this state has to offer. And I say that, there are people who have worked at Disney who I like, but they're not people who are going to be voting Republican, certainly. And so, again, not a loss for DeSantis. Now, with that said, I think I buried this a little too deep now, being 7.5 minutes in. But the other announcement that Disney just made is that the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel, which just opened like last year or the year before, is closing already. A hotel with only 100 rooms that is Star Wars themed. It's a Star Wars hotel in which it's like a cruise ship. You're supposed to go on it and feel like you're going on a space ride for 2 days. It's a whole experience. So it's like, you pay $5,000. It's a lot of money, but you're paying that money because it's like, oh, you're getting on a cruise ship for 2 days. That's how you have to think about it. It's its own experience. You're not going to Disney World and then staying at the Star Wars Hotel. No, you're going specifically for the Star Wars Hotel. And again, only 100 rooms. There's a lot of Star Wars fans in the world, and they couldn't fill 100 rooms. They constantly have been having to do blackout dates because they've never once, in my knowledge, filled this hotel. They've never sold out. And the media wants you to believe that this makes Ron DeSantis look bad. Disney couldn't sell Star Wars. That's how toxic their brand is. Now, I have to say, a lot of people saw this coming, I think, as far as the Star Wars Hotel goes, since they supposedly, the whole thing, you go there, there's no reference to, actual George Lucas Star Wars movies. It's all like the 3 Disney movies that very few people like, that were very polarizing. And so, the appeal for a Disney Star Wars themed 2-day experience that's $4,800, that I can understand why nobody would go to that. You don't have nearly as many people who are fanatically crazy about that. You do have people who are fanatically crazy about the Star Wars movies from the 70s and 80s. If you did a Death Star Hotel cruiser thing, now that would be an obvious, that selling out 100 rooms, I would think that would be guaranteed. All they could do would be, they could just recreate I guess that's 4, right? Where Leia gets captured on the Death Star, and then Luke and Han have to go save her. They could do that as the plot of their 2-day cruise thing. That you would think would be the obvious thing, but no, they didn't do that because they're not good at business. They don't know how to appeal to their own people. That's why Disney thought that they could get away with defending teachers discussing gay sex in kindergarten classes as some kind of civil right of the teacher. That's what started all this. Florida passed a law that said, hey, teachers, guess what? You can't teach about sex in K through 3. Okay? Is that asking too much? Even kids who are like way on the far low end of the bell curve as far as hitting early puberty, don't think there are any kids hitting puberty before 4th grade. These are innocent young minds who need to be studying reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what parents think public school is about. No, actually, public K through 3 school, according to the Walt Disney Corporation, that should be about teaching your kids how to engage in gay sex. And as long as they maintain that, they're just like Bud Light at this point. I think that people were so quick to turn on Bud Light, partially because of the groundwork laid by Disney. People have already realized, hey, these time-honored and cherished brands that we saw as symbols of, American culture, they're turning on us. And so once you cross the bridge of realizing, hey, Walt Disney, the paragon of American virtue and innocence, once you've accepted that they've turned on you, it's very easy to throw Anheuser-Busch under the bus. Or maybe a better analogy would be throwing the book at Anheuser-Busch. This last earnings call for Disney was such a disaster. From what I understand, the only thing that is carrying them as a company right now are the theme parks, not just Walt Disney World in Orlando. That's their biggest theme park, I'm sure, in the world, I would think. But the parks in the other countries. They have Paris, they have Hong Kong, Shanghai, and of course, is Burbank where Disneyland is, or is it Monterey? I forget. I've never been to Disneyland, in case you couldn't tell. I was never a big Disney fan as a kid. We did go to Universal a lot, my family. So I'm glad that I finally got to talk about what is, generally speaking, some good news. It's still kind of negative in that, bad things are happening, but, bad things are happening to not so great people. And so when bad things happen to the bad guys, that kind of, by extension, it means that that's a good thing for us good guys. With that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.